Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Mike Pissarro, the Policy Director for the Watershed Institute. Thank you for staying with us all day. This is our last session for the virtual day, the 8th Annual New Jersey Watershed Conference, Planning for Resilient Watersheds, Vision Management and Implementation, which is hosted by the Watershed Institute and DEP. I want to thank our sponsors. Because of their support, our conference has been able to happen. So please visit them at their tables tomorrow and visit them on the internet. Housekeeping for virtual session today. Session's going, we're recording it. If you have problems with the audios, please make sure you are streaming and your audio is on. Housekeeping. Q&A, please put all your questions in the Q&A. The chat should be disabled, but don't put it there. If it's not, we will get to the questions, as many questions as we can at the end. And if you have any issues, please reach out to us at conference@thewatershed.org. And with that, I want to turn it over to Tom D'Alessio, Executive Director of the Musconetcong Watershed Association.
Thank you, Mike, and thank you, the Watershed Institute and NJDEP, for a wonderful conference so far. We're looking forward to this session and all day tomorrow. And we do encourage folks to stop by our table. The Musconetcong Watershed Association is proud to be a co-sponsor. We will have three fabulous speakers, staff at the Musconetcong Watershed Association, who will talk a bit about opportunities for watershed planning, management, and implementation. Krista Reeves is a certified wetlands delineator. She's our water quality program manager. Ellen Haggerty is a professional engineer, our watershed restoration manager. And Laura Gould is our watershed resilience planner. And we'll talk in particular about the watershed vision plan that we've just adopted. And I am Tom D'Alessio. I'm the executive director of the Musconetcong Watershed Association. And I'm thrilled again to be part of this process. Next slide, please. So this session is all about planning for resilient watersheds, vision, management, and implementation. And we intend on using those three categories to help people better understand how the proper way is to approach watershed planning, and in particular, how to be more resilient and help restore our watersheds. Next slide, please. As I mentioned, I will be moderating this session with Laura, Krista, and Ellen, and we'll also have some opportunities for a Q&A. So we encourage you to provide questions online, and we will be glad to get back to you on those. Next slide, please. The Musconetcong Watershed Association is an independent nonprofit organization dedicated to protecting and improving the quality of the Musconetcong watershed and its waters for people and nature. We were founded in 1992 by local residents who were concerned about preserving the watershed's unique natural and cultural resources, and how these resources are managed by state and local governing bodies. We organize our work under four key pillars of planning, education, advocacy, and stewardship. And you'll hear a bit about those four pillars in this session. Next, please. The Musconetcong watershed starts with the headwaters to Lake Hopatcong, Lake Musconetcong, and down a 42-mile-long Musconetcong River to the Delaware River. Our Musconetcong River is a Category 1 river, and it's also a National Wild and Scenic River, one of the few on the East Coast. Our watershed is 158 square miles. It includes 4 counties and 26 municipalities. This is where regional planning comes into play and why we all need to work together, because we all know water doesn't respect political boundaries. Next, please. When we put together our vision plan, we started thinking a bit about why should we do this kind of work? Why should we plan? Why should we restore our watershed? And I wrote a couple of sentences just to start the imagination moving. We call this a land of possibilities. And if you've ever been to the Musconetcong watershed, you understand what we're talking about. And I'll just quickly go through a couple of the points here. As you travel through the Musconetcong watershed, you can't help but marvel at the beauty and the intimacy of the area. It truly is unique in New Jersey. Standing in the Musconetcong River, you feel like you can touch the surrounding mountains. From the top of Point Mountain, you see the majesty of rolling hills and fertile valleys that have served generations of people and spawned many successful businesses. And in towns like Hackettstown, Netcong, Washington, Hampton, and Bloomsbury, you walk the streets and you feel the history envelop you like a warm blanket. However, the future is not guaranteed, and each of us has an opportunity and a responsibility to do what we can to protect, conserve, and grow our watershed. Next slide, please. And so I'd like to introduce Laura Gould, who will talk a bit about our comprehensive vision plan. And the idea here again is that the vision plan, implementation through watershed management plans of 319 and NWQI, and restorations such as removing dams and restoring historic buildings and a river provide opportunities to actually achieve our common purposes. Laura?
Next slide, please. So first, many of you may be wondering, what is a vision plan? The Musconetcong Watershed Association's vision plan is a 25-year plan, and we're looking to the year 2050, but what are we trying to do here? First, the plan is a resource for anyone who's interested in protecting and improving watershed health. In particular, our organization is looking at improving the waters for both people and nature. The vision plan itself details the current health of the watershed, so where things are going right and where things have some room for improvement. It also discusses our shared goals for protecting water quality, natural resources, and our communities. And perhaps most importantly, it describes how we can work together to meet these shared goals in the year 2050. Next slide. The vision itself is that in 2050, the Musconetcong watershed is a healthy ecosystem where people and nature coexist. The river and its aquifers are resilient to threats, restored as needed, and are a valued part of the thriving communities in which they flow. Next slide, please. So as you can imagine, our vision sets the direction that we would like to see the watershed move towards and get to by the year 2050. And we're measuring that success in a couple of different ways. Most broadly, we have 5 key goals, which are main components of the vision that describe how we might get there in a little bit more detail. More specifically, each goal has 1 to 3 measurable markers that we're calling targets, which will denote whether we've achieved those goals. And in order to actually do the work, we've developed strategies, which are methods that the Musconetcong Watershed Association and our various partners can use to reach our targets. And again, we are starting with current watershed health, and we're using these targets and strategies to move forward to a 2050 vision. Next slide, please. The vision plan has 5 main goals. They are to protect the river, to promote clean and abundant water, to protect land and water, to promote thriving communities, and to plan for resilience. In the next slides, I'll be going through each of these goals in a little bit more detail. Next slide, please. The first goal of the plan is to protect and preserve the Musconetcong River, its headwater lakes, and tributaries. So the first target here is that the Musconetcong River, its headwater lakes and tributaries are restored to state and federal standards for primary contact. And primary contact is basically water that is safe to fish, swim, and drink. We'd also like to make sure that the river is jointly stewarded and appreciated by all governments and peoples in the watershed. We understand that collaboration is going to be key to getting the rest of the plan together. Next slide, please. Goal 2 of the Musconetcong Watershed sort of vision plan is to promote access to clean and abundant water. We know that having clean and abundant water is going to be a sort of big issue in the 21st century, and we know that we can't achieve this goal alone. But we want to make sure that, as soon as possible and by 2050, drinking water is safe to consume and meets federal and state standards. And here we specified that it is safe to consume because not all of the state and federal standards are as stringent as sort of new sciences about water health, for example, in areas such as PFAS. The second target for goal 2 is that all wastewater systems meet federal and state standards. This goal is so that we do not have so much effluent leaching into our water systems, degrading water health bacterially. And the third target is that water uses are balanced between humans and nature. And this would mean that all subwatersheds have a positive net water availability so that we're not sort of taking more from the watershed, the land, and the water, then we can reasonably hope to see return to the area in a given amount of time. Next slide, please. The third goal is to protect and restore land and water for natural ecosystems and recreation. This is what a lot of the rest of the presentation is going to focus on. Our first target here is that at least 7 additional dams along the Musconetcong River or its tributaries will be either removed or modified to provide fish passage by the year 2050. And a key component of that is that the ecology of the river will be restored as needed sort of during and after this restoration work. Target 2 is that at least 6,800 acres, or 50% of remaining undeveloped and unpreserved lands in the watershed, are preserved as open space, farmland, and/or defragmented natural habitats. Here are some key things to think about are that natural habitats are important for our key species and ecosystems in the area, but they don't work if they are fragmented and separated across different municipalities. We need to have corridors where animals and ecosystems can exist away from people as much as possible. The third target for goal 3 is that there are at least 42 safe and accessible points of entry along the Musconetcong which support public recreation. As we said earlier, the river is 42 miles long, so this would be an average of 1 entry point per mile. Next slide, please. The fourth goal of the vision plan is to promote thriving communities and to ensure that development protects and enhances the watershed. We're not an organization that is wholly against development, but we understand that there is sort of some natural limits on development after which we see degraded water quality. And so with that in mind, we'd like to make sure that we promote thriving communities while balancing the need for ecosystem preservation. The first target here is that the land base of the agriculture industry is secure. And here we're defining that as 4,300 more acres of farmland are preserved and are staying in operation for commercial production. This helps secure the food base that the Musconetcong relies on. Target 4.2 is that new developments are located and designed to not impact ground or surface water quality or quantity. This is sort of a key point that we're not necessarily against development, but we understand we need to kind of limit our impacts. Target 4.3 is that remaining historic and culturally significant sites in the watershed are preserved and maintained. We wouldn't be where we are today without some of these key historic sites, for example, the mills and dams. And we're not against removing them all because they tell the story of how humans congregated in the watershed and how we've gotten to this point today. We understand that they can't necessarily all be there, but we know that this history is an important part of our understanding of the watershed and of human development in the area. Next slide, please. Finally, goal 5 of the vision plan is to support communities as they plan for resilience in light of a changing climate. We know that the climate is changing, and our goal is not to stop that entirely because we as a watershed cannot do that. However, we want to make sure that we're reducing risks from hazards for people as the climate does continue to change. In particular, hazards such as flooding and fires are likely to be more and more prevalent in the watershed. And in order to help our communities with this, we'd like to make sure that local and regional plans, regulations, and investments address future and current hazards and reduce them over time. Next slide, please. So in review, we have these 5 goals that we would like to see accomplished by the year 2050. They are to protect the river, to promote clean and abundant water, to protect land and water, to promote thriving communities, and to plan for resilience. And Mike, if you could please click on the in brief link to the left of the bottom of the slide there. Thanks, Mike. And if you could just kind of scroll through the in brief, that would be really helpful. I just want to give our guests a sense of what the actual plan looks like. So we start by describing the Musconetcong watershed and some of its geography. We have a note from Tom, our executive director, about the possibilities of the watershed and what we're trying to protect here. The plan was created over 18 months with many different stakeholders ranging from business owners, local community members, our board of trustees. We also describe our shared vision for the watershed and start to break down what that looks like through our goals and implementation section. Each goal has information about the targets, why we selected the target, what makes it really interesting for the watershed. And there are some pictures to give you a sense of some of the work that the MWA is currently doing. And if you could pause here, we have for each target what strategies the MWA will pursue and what strategies some of our partners may pursue. And if you could scroll down to acknowledgements, or you could click acknowledgements in the top right, and then scroll up just a tiny bit. We also have a link to the full plan in this in brief document, which describes all of the different data that we've collected over the last 18 months to sort of back up what science we have advocated for here, and to give interested parties a better understanding of the Musconetcong watershed and watershed health principles in general. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Krista Reeves.
Thank you, Laura. And if we could go back to the slides. Okay, I was going to say I see the presenter view. Okay, we can go ahead. So if that's the 30,000 foot view, if that's the vision of where we want to go, this next portion is a more technical way on how to get there and how to get that clean water. It's through a 319H plan, watershed management plan funded through the Clean Water Act. Next slide, please. So the purpose of the planning using a 319H process really is these four overarching themes. It's a holistic watershed view and approach to planning. It addresses all sources of non-point source pollution, ensuring that the solutions are tailored to the watershed's specific needs. It also increases funding opportunities. These are all called out inside of the plan. It's also data-oriented and action-oriented. It integrates all of the water quality data, pollutant loading, modeling, and community input, as Laura had mentioned, lots of stakeholder review and feedback sessions. And then, importantly, it's involving the regulatory and stakeholder alignment. A 9-element plan outlined by the EPA helps municipalities, conservation groups, strengthen those partnerships and puts everybody on the same page with surface water quality standards. Next slide, please. So it's a 9-element plan, as I just said, and so it really is a comprehensive framework of how to do watershed management planning, how to get to your goals. Goal number one is to identify the causes and sources of pollution. You can use a lot of desktop information, GIS, AmNet, HydroShare. But once you've done that background data gathering, you can see where there are data gaps, and then you can go out and do some monitoring to fill those data gaps. Next slide, please. Number two is to then estimate those load reductions that you expect. If you already have a TMDL, great. It tells you exactly how much you need to reduce that certain pollutant by. If it's called out as you have a TMDL for bacteria and it says you need to reduce it by 93%, then you have to figure out what types of BMPs or best management practices you need to employ to get you there. If you are on the impaired waters list through the integrated report, also known as the 303D list, that'll call out your pollutants of concern that you are exceeding those criteria limits for. And then you can go and use modeling tools to figure out where and how those BMPs would reduce your expected loads. Next slide, please. And then for once you have that information, you're going to describe those management measures, what type of BMPs, and then where are they going to be. This step helps you prioritize. You know, it's one thing to go out and plant trees and put in buffers and rain gardens, but is it having the impact, the return on investment that you want? You need to identify and prioritize. Next, please. Step 4 is to estimate technical and financial assistance. This is huge. A lot of organizations don't have a comprehensive team that can be able to do absolutely everything that might be needed in a mixed use zone. If you're agricultural, you may need to reach out to NJRC&D or NRCS offices for their expertise, and even local producers. If it's more urban, suburban, you want to contact your local DPW and understand what kind of watershed implementation plans they're already doing through the MS4 permitting. Is your organization going to be the lead for certain projects? If not, what other project partners might you want to partner with, employ, or talk to about leading other projects in that focus area? Next slide. And then develop an information and educational component. You know, if you were here for the morning session where we had to talk about regenerative agriculture, you know, there was a point at which somebody had asked, you know, was an NWQI or a 319 plan helpful? And they didn't think so. And that's because of that misstep between education, right? So it's who has this in their hands, and do they have the resources to provide that educational uplift and capacity building for people to implement and then maintain these best management practices over time. This is just a short list of the examples of programs that are available out there. At the MWA, we've started a skill building workshop called Watershed Allies Training. We've done DIY septic and homeowner stormwater assessments, how to submit a public comment. These are all things that can inform not only farmers, but just local residents in their area about things they can do on their own property to affect water quality change. Next slide. And then you're going to develop a project schedule. I know you can't read that slide. Maybe if you get it run back through on the recording, you can take a look at it. But basically what you're doing is you're looking at timelines. You are trying to find a balance between your aspirational goals and what's truly practical and implementable. You want to do this to be informed by grant schedules, funding schedules. So you outline these in 2, 5, and 10-year timelines. So that you understand what you want to implement when, and then how that funding is going to come through. Next slide, please. And then while you're doing this timeline, this is a time you're really going to get out into your community and start to see where those projects could be implemented. A lot of times it's going to be public buildings. You're going to look at municipal buildings, schools, places of worship in your area are good targets for these types of projects because it not only comes with the benefits of best management practices, but you're also getting an educational component out of this. You're uplifting capacity and skills, usually of a maintenance crew, landscaping crews at this point. And this gives you also that time to do a lot of that outreach. This is when the rubber meets the road. It's great to use Google Earth. It's your best friend, and you can target a lot of these things. But once you actually get on site, does the land slope just right for you to put a rain garden to the right of this building, or is it just not going to practically work there? You need to be able to go out, make those touch points with people, and see the practical implementation strategies that you're going to recommend in your project. Next slide, please. And then you're going to describe your interim and measurable milestones. If you can't measure it, you can't manage it. So you're going to define that progress and in what time frame you expect some of those goals to be met. Next slide. And then you're going to ID those indicators to measure that progress. This is twofold. You want to have criteria to evaluate the impacts of the project within the public and the perception inside of the public view. And then you're also going to want to create criteria to evaluate the impact of the project in the actual stream or the riparian area where you've done the restoration, right? A project impact assessment. Next slide, please. And then you're going to develop a monitoring component. This can be all kinds of techniques. You can use low-cost sensor stations, like little hobo tidbits that you put in the water if you're looking for temperature decrease in an area. This could be community science programs that go out and look at macroinvertebrate assemblages, or look if it's in a lake community, you could be monitoring for harmful algal blooms. Can also seek funding in those 2, 5, and 10-year timelines for lab certified sampling. And then once you also have those technical advisory committees, you have partners or other environmental agencies that can help you do your monitoring. Next slide. And so some things that you're going to need to take into consideration just beyond those 9 elements before you undertake something of this magnitude. You want to understand the goal and the vision before you start. What are you trying to affect? What change, what best management practices are you looking for in that 10-year timeline? Updated weather information. You want to have all of those predictions further out. Rainstorms are becoming more intense and more frequent. So you need to take those types of things into consideration when you're looking into best management practices. Really know your geography, your geology, soils and vegetation. If you have limestone in your area, that's huge for best management practices. You don't want to create more problems than you're solving with sinkholes. And then understand the types of expertise that you're going to need to create this project and moving forward for implementation. Do you need somebody that understands GIS, modeling software, data analysis, and then local buy-in? Those feedback sessions that we call our Flow Together series, we had those all throughout the watershed, and some of the feedback was not expected. You wouldn't think that people were against trees in certain areas, but as we heard from some of the other presentations today, some people are scared of leaves clogging up drains or getting inside of their rain garden. How much maintenance is that going to create? So understanding what the aesthetic of a community is, what they want it to look like into their future. Are they concerned about turning gray stormwater infrastructure into green stormwater infrastructure because they're scared of attracting vermin or other types of wildlife? That's a true fear that some people have. So understanding those things before you go in to these projects is key. And then plan how you're going to distribute and communicate this. A plan does absolutely nothing if it's sitting on the shelf, if it's not in the hands of the people who are actually going to use this, because at the end of the day, this is a toolkit. All of the homework has been done for them, but if they don't know that it's there and they don't know what's inside of that plan, it's just going to sit there, and then they don't know what to implement. Then you have this patchwork quilt of only addressing things when it becomes a problem. And then I just want to point out, don't underestimate the administrative side of reporting. I've talked to several people now who have written these plans, and a no-cost extension is on the horizon for you. I can almost guarantee it. It takes a long time. So just wanted to give a shout out to that. And then just be organized as possible. It's a lot of data. It's a lot of material, and it can quickly get away from you. Next slide. And so the MWA has 2 319 plans in the works right now. The one on the right-hand side is the Middle Musconetcong plan. That draft has been turned into NJDEP and is under review, and they're making comments right now. That goes from Hackettstown down to Bloomsbury. And then we have the lower Musconetcong that we're working on now through the Highlands and Hunterdon County. And that goes, it's all of Hunterdon County that is contained within the Musconetcong watershed. We just wrapped up our data collection for that right now, and we are in the midst of writing municipal water quality reports, and then we can move on to the next step. Next slide. So what about the upper watershed? I just talked about the middle and the lower watershed and all the planning that's going on there. Well, as a result of having good partnerships, NRCS reached out to us and said that they have this program called the NWQI, the National Water Quality Initiative. And so this is the ag side of water quality management and planning. So we had a few conversations with them, applied and received funds to write a water quality initiative report for the entire upper watershed, which goes from Hackettstown all the way up through the rest of the watershed. Next slide, please. And the main goals of the NWQI closely align with the 319, but they have a slightly different focus. It's much more ag-based, and then it targets funding for those agricultural portions of the watershed. But it does accelerate water quality improvements by focusing strategically, once again, on those hot spots, those high priority areas. And it also brings in that leveraging of partnerships for a greater impact. And then this is another pathway to get to funding for a 319. It just opens up a lot more funding doors than some other planning techniques. Next slide. And I'm not going to go through all of these things in here, but the main difference between a 319 plan and an NWQI is that the NWQI is a little more ag focused, like I had said, whereas a 319 is focused on all sources of non-point source pollution, and the funding sources are more tailored towards agricultural areas. But you're already doing the homework for this anyway, so you know that you can just look up those funding sources as well, so that as moving forward, you can create a comprehensive plan. Thank you very much, everybody. I'm going to turn that over to my colleague, Ellen Haggerty.
Thanks, Krista. So to talk about the implementation projects of some of these plans, which primarily for the MWA has taken the form of dam removals in the watershed. So I'm going to talk a little bit about our dam removal program, the dam removals we've completed to date, and the ones we have planned in the near future, and then some of our other planned restoration activities. So next slide, please. We have at least 51 dams in the Musconetcong watershed on the river and in its tributaries. So how do we prioritize which ones we're going after first? We are doing that by looking at some of the class 1 and class 2 high hazard or significant hazard potential dams. So those are the ones that are predicted to cause potential loss of life or significant property damage if they were to fail, and looking at those that are in poor condition, particularly targeting those. And then looking at dams that are causing flooding in nearby communities. You know, there's kind of a common misperception a lot of times that I hear from people that don't all dams help with flooding? Don't they control flooding? But for the most part, the dams that we have in our watershed are exacerbating flooding issues. And so we're looking at where communities are experiencing flooding problems and focusing on those. Fish passage and other aquatic organism habitat is really important. The Musconetcong discharges to the Delaware River, and so we are trying to provide passage for migratory fish from the ocean and then into the Delaware and into the Musconetcong, as well as just passage of local fish communities. We have you know, brook trout populations that we're trying to enhance and improve. So just trying to identify the dams that make sense from a fish passage perspective and improving habitat of other you know, potential T&E species or just special interest species. And then, you know, based on all of the water quality work that Krista's doing, identifying the areas of the river and tributaries that have degraded water quality that would benefit from a dam removal, where the dams are causing that degraded water quality. You know, you see the lower oxygen, higher temperatures, increased sediment behind the dam. So trying to improve those conditions through dam removal. And then recreational opportunities. In addition to the Musconetcong being a designated wild and scenic river, it's also a designated national water trail, and has you know, tremendous opportunity for recreational opportunities. And a lot of people paddle on the river, but we would love to have longer stretches, along the river without those barriers in place. And also dams, the banks of dams, of the impoundment areas can be very soft and squishy and dangerous. You can walk out into the sediment and end up waist or chest deep if you're not careful. So as we talked about in the vision plan, one of our targets is to provide those additional access points to the river and restored floodplains where dams used to be, provide a great opportunity for that. And of course, you can't remove a dam if you don't have the dam owner and landowner agreements on the project. So there are some dams that we would love to take out, but the dam owner is attached to their dam for whatever reason. So sometimes that's just a non-starter. But we do find that you can go back in a few years and maybe see if the situation has changed. Maybe there's a new owner, or maybe the property owner is getting tired of people trespassing on their property or something. So I'm just checking in with them and seeing what the current situation is. And then public acceptance. I mean, there's always some concerns related to most dam removals. People are concerned about losing their waterfalls or losing their fishing access, or losing their waterfront property. But we try to find a balance between where the benefits of the dam removal outweigh those concerns. But we have some very large dams like the Lake Hopatcong Dam or the Lake Musconetcong Dam. Obviously, we're not targeting removing those just based on the lakefront communities there, but just an important consideration when we are identifying our targets. So next slide, please. On this map, so MWA has removed 6 dams to date on the Musconetcong. They're clustered in 2 different clusters. So on this map here, the dams, little boxes in green, are the dams that have been removed. The red boxes are the intact, complete dams. And then the kind of peach colored boxes are partially breached dams. So there's a little cluster around Hackettstown. Some of the first dams that were removed by MWA were the Grindike and Sabre Grove Dam right in Hackettstown. Those were done in partnership with Hackettstown to alleviate some flooding concerns in that community. And then the most recent dam that MWA removed was in 2023, that East Avenue Dam, Beatty's Mill Dam, kind of right in the middle there. That was a partially breached dam, and the river was severely eroding one of the stream banks and threatening a bridge downstream. So that one was taken out. Next slide, please. And so this is the other cluster of dams that MWA has removed so far, starting at the confluence of the Delaware River. So these dams were taken out from 2011 to 2016, the Regelsville, Finesville, and Hughesville dams. This opened up about 4.5 miles of river for migratory fish. And indeed, we did see right after the Hughesville Dam was taken out, we saw American shad at the base of the next upstream dam, the Warren Glen Dam. Next slide, please. So this is just a couple photos of the dams that were removed. The first one's in 2008, 2009 in Hackettstown. Next slide. These were the 2 at the confluence of the Delaware River. You can see the Finesville Dam on the right. Despite, this was not a class 1 high hazard dam, but did there were several fatalities at this dam over the years due to the hydraulics of the dam. So this one was really important to remove, both from a fish passage perspective and then just also a public safety perspective. Next slide, please. Just a photo of the Hughesville Dam. So this was the third most upstream dam from the Delaware. It opened up that 4.5 miles. And then the East Ave Beatties Mill Dam, you can see in the photo here the erosion of the stream bank on river left. Next slide, please. So where we go from here, we mentioned in our vision plan, our target is to remove at least 7 additional dams. We have a few identified that we're working on actively now, a few kind of waiting in the wings, and then are working on developing an inventory of all the remaining 40+ dams, and trying to determine based on the planning that Krista's doing, identifying the areas that would really benefit from the dam removals. So these are a couple that we're working on right now. The one on the left is the Hackettstown Reservoir Dam, and then the one in the middle is the Mine Hill Reservoir Dam. These are both former water supply reservoirs for the city of Hackettstown that aren't used anymore. The middle one, the Mine Hill one, was constructed in 1896, and the Hackettstown one was constructed in 1934. So these are quite old, no longer serving their purpose, and both in poor condition. The Hackettstown Reservoir Dam is 42 feet tall. It's a class 1 high hazard dam, and it was actually dewatered a few years ago. New Jersey Dam Safety had required that be dewatered because of the condition of the dam. So it's been dewatered, but you can see the impoundment area, the stream channel has not been restored yet, and not really doing any benefits from a water quality perspective yet, or a fish habitat perspective. So trying to take both of those 2 dams out in the near future. We had over half of our funding secured for that. We have funding from the Nature Conservancy, from U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, from the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation, and from NRCS, from the Regional Conservation Partnership Program, RCPP. Unfortunately, our CPP funding is frozen right now. We don't know how long that's going to be, but hoping that comes back. We need a little bit more funding to get to our final endpoint, but are working on the design right now. We do have some funding for the design that's still in place. And then, and I'll mention just this, these dams also have the potential to really increase some eastern brook trout populations. There's a eastern brook trout population currently downstream of this, of the Mine Hill Reservoir Dam, which is the lower dam. And it's not thriving as much as it could because of the increased water temperatures from the presence of the dam. So once the dams come out and the channel is restored, New Jersey Fish and Wildlife is planning on restoring those brook trout populations to the Mine Brook. And then the dam on the right of this slide is the Warren Glen Mill Dam. We are partnering on this dam with American Rivers and New Jersey Fish and Wildlife. New Jersey Fish and Wildlife is a partial owner of the dam. They own the land on the northern side of the dam, and then a private landowner owns the southern portion. And this is another class 1 high hazard dam. It's been modeled to result in 50 fatalities and very significant property damage if it were to fail. It's currently our most downstream dam on the Musconetcong near the confluence of the Delaware. So removing this would be a tremendous benefit for fish passage. This is where we've seen the American chat at the base of the dam. It provides a barrier to recreation at this point. It's very difficult to portage around this dam and the sediment. There's a lot of sediment built up behind the dam and very soft and squishy banks. So very difficult to get around this. It's also an attractive nuisance. Kids in the summer come and slide down this dam, which makes us all very nervous. So we're hoping it's just another reason to take it out. The water quality impacts here, the water quality in the impoundment area is poor. So there's just a lot of reasons to take this one out, which is why we're partnering with American Rivers and Fish and Wildlife on this one. American Rivers had secured our CPP funding for this dam as well. About $9 million, about half the total project cost. That funding is also frozen at the moment. And we had submitted a application for NOAA's fish passage funding just a couple of weeks ago. That is also somewhat not sure what's going to happen with that right now. So we're hoping that goes through and we get that funding and can take that dam out. And so then after these initial three, we have a couple others that we know we want to focus on, but we'll be working to really create that better inventory and prioritize the remaining dams. Next slide, please. So just looking back again at our where these dams are located, just the Warren Glen Dam, you can see closest to the confluence. The Bloomsbury Dam, that is being removed by U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. Was supposed to be this year. I don't know what's going to happen with that given their funding. Once those two dams are out, then we will have opened up over 13 miles of the river to migratory fish and to recreation up to Asbury. Asbury is where our office is, and we'll talk a little bit more about what's happening in Asbury in a later slide. And then the cluster on the right. So it's a little bit harder to see, but to the right of the dams that we previously took out, you can see a 26 and 27 on the Minebrook. So those are the two former water supply reservoirs, the dams that we're proposing to work on next. And then downstream from the East Avenue Dam, the Newburgh Mill Dam also is suspected to contribute to flooding in Hackettstown. So that's one of the next ones we plan to focus on. Next slide, please. And then as far as other restoration actions, I mean, there's a lot we want to do. As Krista talked about, we have all those plans for the BMPs to install. We have areas of river that would benefit from some stream restoration projects. A lot of the goals and targets in our vision plan kind of speak to the need for green infrastructure, as we talked about on some of the earlier webinars today. What we have been doing so far is we have funding from the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation through our Push Back the Lawn program. So we've planted a whole lot of trees in riparian areas along the river and tributaries. Craig Fleming in our office, our water quality program coordinator, has been leading that this fall and has planted over 400 trees this past fall. And we have another plans for a few hundred more this spring. So that's been something that we have been able to implement, but in general, now we're kind of in the planning stages of identifying the additional restoration activities that we want to do and trying to find funding for those. Next slide. So this is a little bit different kind of restoration. We were donated a couple buildings here in Asbury, our office building, which is our River Resource Center, and then this historic grist and graphite mill that we've been working on restoring over the last 10 plus years. And we plan to use this building as an interpretive center and potentially some additional office space for us. You can see kind of in the foreground here, we planted some rain gardens to capture the rain from the road. We have permeable pavers in the parking lot. So with the native plant gardens at our office across the street and here, we're trying to use these as demonstration gardens so that people can see how beautiful they can be. We are also the Asbury Dam that I pointed out previously is it's kind of under the road here that you can see sort of behind the sign. It's the county road, county bridge over the river, which somewhat complicates the potential removal of that dam just because it is kind of built into the bridge. So we're looking at we'd love to be able to take that dam out, but possibly might just build or construct some kind of fish passage structure there. But how that ties into this is we are in the process of constructing some portage facilities around the dam. We've developed an educational trail along the river in this location, and we're really trying to make Asbury a destination that people can come and enjoy the river. Inside the mill and the interpretive center, we're going to have interpretation about the history of the building and the operations that were there, but then also kind of a broader focus on the work that we're doing in the watershed, in the river and on the land and the community history. So really bringing in that educational pillar and just helping the public to understand what we're doing and why we're doing it. I think that's it.
So thank you again, Ellen, Laura, and Krista. We appreciate the presentation you've given. There are a couple of questions in the Q&A we're more than happy to answer. And if others would like to have Q&A, please, we feel free to put your questions in the Q&A. The first question goes to the issue of watershed improvement plans. And Chris has asked, are there any towns in the Musconetcong working to pull together a regional watershed improvement plan that we know of or are supporting? We are working with both the New Jersey Highlands Council and with individual municipalities. We have a municipal membership program where we actually have municipalities that we work with in particular to help with their stormwater points. And we started the conversation to see if they would like our engagement in putting together watershed improvement plans. As you've heard throughout the day today, and you'll hear tomorrow, it is almost folly for 564 municipalities to put together individual plans because neither water nor pollution respect political boundaries. So finding opportunities to work together is key. And we believe that our watershed vision plan, the first vision plan for a watershed in New Jersey, as well as our 319 plans, provide the framework and the foundation for starting the conversation. In fact, the targets that have been identified in our vision plan and have been identified through data in the 319 plans and will be identified in NWQI work will help form the basis for identifying where we need to make improvements. And unlike 319 or watershed improvement plans. We wanted to start first with bringing everybody to the table and understanding what are the panoply of challenges and opportunities. And instead of trying to deal with just one problem and addressing that one problem, because maybe one solution may not be the best solution for fixing other problems, we wanted to bring everyone together. So if there are any municipalities in our watershed that are interested in a watershed and regional watershed improvement plan, we encourage you to reach out to us. And if you're in a municipality beyond our watershed, we encourage you to reach out to your watershed association and to work with them. Is there anything any of our experts would like to add to that?
Yeah, I just wanted to add that watershed improvement plans are a required part of the MS4 permitting process that all municipalities will be going through in the next couple of years. So I do expect that the towns in the Musconetcong watershed will start to put together watershed improvement plan, and we are not currently working with municipalities on this issue in particular, but we are looking forward to doing so.
Great, thank you. Our second question comes from Bill, who says we've witnessed recent decisions made in Washington that have affected public funding priorities. The watershed vision plan goals presented here are lofty, but are also appropriate and realistic. The general public is the prime beneficiary of these goals. With a relatively small local population in the watershed to support these efforts, are there sufficient public or non-government funds available to advance and achieve the goals that are presented here? And Ellen can go in a little greater detail, but I'll just basically say, starting first off, remove all of the high hazard dams in particular will require federal and state funding as well as private funding. And as Ellen has mentioned, millions of dollars in federal commitments have been frozen. And with little further action taking place, it threatens the progress of these efforts. And last but not least, if any one of these high hazard dams breaks today, we know we will see loss of life downstream and loss of property, and that has to be addressed. Ellen, if you'd like to follow up on that.
No, I mean, I think you covered it. I think the funding was there a couple months ago, and now it may or may not be. So we were in good shape a couple months ago.
And we know that other watersheds and other municipalities are in the same boat. So we encourage everyone to reach out, not only to us, but also to your federal contacts and make sure they know the status of the situation here. Because the only way we'll be able to move this, we believe, is if we have a united front to say that we are intending to do this. And at least I'll speak for our watershed association. We firmly believe, and I'm sure other watershed associations believe this too, we are doing this on pennies on the dollar, that we're providing greater value than ever anticipated. We have a question about BDAs, beaver dam analogs. Do you study or have data about the aquifer recharge provided by these dams? Krista, if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah, that is something that a previous colleague of ours, Annie Polkowski, and I had talked about quite a bit as a proposed BMP. It's something we didn't dig into a lot with this middle Musconetcong or lower Musconetcong plans as of yet. It's something we have a lot of karst geology in the area, and it's something that needs to be studied further so that we're not adversely impacting water quality by opening up sinkholes. I know that it's best paired with other types of management practices, but it's definitely on our radar. You know, our restoration expert Ellen at the moment is very tied up with dams, and so it'll be something that we can talk about once she, you know, passes this hurdle a little bit here. Great,
thank you, Krista. And then we have a question from Andrea about asking if anyone's interested in the Assunpink watershed dams. USDA is doing a public meeting tonight in Robbinsville about the preparation of their environmental assessment for 5 dams in the area. That is outside of our watershed, but I believe that is in the Watershed Institute's watershed. And so maybe Mike, you could answer that.
Thank you, Tom. Yes, we do address the Assunpink watershed, Millstone Township in Monmouth County down to Trenton and Mercer County. So if people are interested, that is happening. Unfortunately, I won't be able to be there. We have this conference thing tomorrow. So And you all mentioned, you know, the regional watershed improvement plans and the MS4 permit. And, you know, I cannot agree with you more. That is going to be so important that towns do that to get 565 different ways. So there are several sessions tomorrow all about that. We're actually organizing 3 watersheds, trying to pull them together for a regional approach. So we have a case study on the Stony Brook approach, sort of lessons learned, what's going on with that. So please come out. We still have some time, so if people have some additional questions, please throw them in the Q&A.
I see another question. Victoria has just raised. What about the bioregional approach, which is state of the art around the world to deal with holistic ecosystems? The design school for regenerating Earth is doing it all over the world. Krista or Ellen, would you like to talk to the issue of bioregional approaches?
I think that that's an excellent idea. I haven't dug into that. So moving forward, you know, keeping that in mind as we talk about these WIPs being regional, that's definitely something that should be on the list of things to look into. I think that that's an excellent approach. I've often thought that that's how we should also politically manage things. Like we talk about the river, you know, as boundaries for things, but having a bioregional approach to how we manage governmentally would also be a very good way to approach things. But I have not personally dug into that yet. Ellen, I don't know if you've looked into that yet.
Well, I mean, I think I need to look into it a little bit more to understand exactly what that means, but I do know that there was a significant discussion about the, you know, regional context of like the Warren Mill Dam removal in our NOAA application and just how that fits into the overall big picture, you know, not just focusing on just that one dam and why we're taking out just that one dam, but why we're taking it out in the larger context of things. So, you know, I think that that's definitely something that we try to do, but there might be something more to learn from that specific approach that we'll definitely look into.
Remind them to.
And I'll just mention that one of the other ideas, the possibility to look at, is the issue of biophilia. And in particular, the American Planning Association came out with a report last year or two about biophilic cities and had a comprehensive plan for biophilia. And so if you're interested, I encourage you to check out the American Planning Association Planning Advisory Service report on biophilic cities.
And
And then
just
Victoria.
to address Victoria's follow-up comment, I mean, we do cultural resource assessments as part of all of our dam removal assessments. So looking at whether there are any important cultural aspects to the dams that we want to preserve. For that Mine Hill Dam, it was constructed in 1896 and it is kind of a unique structure. We're looking to preserve that and provide some interpretation around that. Also working with the indigenous people on their association with the dams, well, not with the dams, but with the rivers where the dams are now and restoring those dams. You know, looking at all the different recreational and just public benefits to removing the dams, and then also considering when we have to keep a dam because a whole lot of people like it and enjoy it. So I think to the extent possible, we are considering those human factors. But you know, again, we'll look at that framework to see if there's anything more to learn from that.
And it's also
And
important to circle back and remind folks about our vision plan and the whole idea. And with Laura, was that what you were going to talk about?
yeah, I was just going to say the vision plan itself does take into account some of these like economic and cultural issues, as well as the politics of how watershed management has happened in the past and how it works today in the 21st century. So I think without using this term and without digging into it further, the vision plan has a semi-bioregional lens at least.
And our vision, again, includes both people and nature, and it's in our mission statement. Remind folks about that. Mike, if we have 2 more minutes, I'd love us to call back the slideshow and to actually be able to pull up the full story map. So if we can go to the slide that had the last of Laura's slides that had both the option of the in brief and the full story map, that would connect us to that. And the reason to show this is that we intentionally used story maps rather than producing a hard copy document. There we go. If you can click on the right link, and if we can call that up, we'll show how how the plan actually can be viewed in its entirety. And so for the folks who may not know, Story Map is a convention that you can use that pulls together mapping information, geographic information systems, as well as other graphics and information. It's more interactive than PowerPoint, and it creates the opportunity for the viewer to actually go backwards, forwards, inside, outside. You don't read it cover to cover. And it allows you to basically see the vision plan according to the areas you want. And so what you see here is the full story plan. And if you just scroll down, Mike, you'll basically we have an executive summary, the plan introduction, challenges and opportunities, the goals, and then the acknowledgements. And if you just click on the challenges, it'll give a sense of what that is, how you can actually find information about this. And you'll see there again, drop downs that provide everything from water quality to wildlife, historic context, land use, economy, climate, and management. And it employs the data and the research that we have. All of this information was shared with 2 technical advisory committees. Several folks who are on this session were part of that. We thank you very much. And we thank all of the folks in the technical advisory committees who helped ground this. But making sure that our vision is grounded actually in the data that our water quality team of Krista and Craig pulled together. It's grounded in the work that Ellen is doing on dam removals and river restorations. It's grounded in the work that Laura's doing in wastewater and regenerative agriculture. Ben Skolka, our policy and advocacy manager, working with him and with others to make sure that we address failing septics in particular, and ensuring that agricultural practices, as we heard this morning, could be more regenerative. And if we do that, we actually have multiple benefits, including addressing water quality and runoff. And then also Stephen Gransky, our communications and development manager, sharing it on the web, sharing it on social media, et cetera. And then Linda Cerso, who's actually our education outreach manager, who makes sure that we use this information through our river talks, our Camp Muskie, and others. So we encourage folks to go to our full story map as well as the in brief. And we welcome any and all comments. And if there are any watershed associations that are interested in putting together a vision plan, we'd be more than happy to share with you the benefits and the challenges we went through. But to tell you, it was definitely worth it because it helped frame not only our work, but also help local officials, regional and state officials better understand how we work. And the last point I'll mention on all this is that we intentionally included targets, measurable details, because what gets measured gets done. And we very much believe that the targets we've identified can and should be embraced by local officials, county officials, state officials, and certainly the public. And by 2050, we believe we can get to our vision by achieving those targets. We have one more question. Alternative funding sources being very successful, a different paradigm versus philanthropy. And yes, Victoria, we appreciate that discussion. It's clear that there's not enough funds in the world to take care of all of the infrastructure challenges that we have. But certainly we're moving forward. The American Society of Civil Engineers, ACE, put together a report card. Every couple of years they do that. And it was very clear that we were failing in many forms of infrastructure, including dam removals, park maintenance, et cetera. And we need to address a number of these challenges. And we believe that watershed associations play a key role in that.
All right, last call for questions. This has been a great discussion. All right, I will wait for a couple of questions, just some logistics for tomorrow. 8:15, check-in and breakfast. Parking permits, we sent you a parking permit. Please print it out. No guarantees if you don't. And please note some of the parking lots may have changed from previous emails. So it's parking lots 3, 5, 6, 7, 11, and 13. We still have the virtual option. So if you are somewhere and you don't want to drive to Ewing, New Jersey, we do have the live stream and we'll be having the virtual. All right. Well, you know what? I don't see any more questions and we have 4 minutes to spare. So thank you, Musconetcong Watershed Association. This was a great program. I'm glad we were able to do it. You know, unfortunately, it was at the cost of FEMA having to pull out. And Jim talked about that this morning, so I'm not going to rehash what's going on down there. But I will see everyone either in person or virtually tomorrow. There's still a chance to register for in person if you want. I'm printing out the name cards in 5 minutes. So please, if you want to be there and want a name card, tell me now. And with that, thank you, everyone. See you tomorrow.
Thanks, bye.
Thank you.